So then we are back with more understandings from the time of the second tabernacle services where we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage. So then we can understand the time of the end as per Yeshayahu the prophet, known for some reason as Isaiah. Not sure the person that came up with this name, doesn't exist. But then the true prophet is Yeshayahu, and he then gave us these understanding of the 61st chapter, where then we must understand there are no numbers in the holy instructions. These numbers are simply a mere number so we can localize ourselves, but even though those translators, they did not understand the layering, so the numbers, they means nothing. When they understand, for instance, the chapter 1:8 is prior of the 61st, they begin their quest of understanding layerings rather than numbers. But then during this time where we find ourselves transitioning from the time of the 1,000 years of deceit, thus then the 1,000 years of Nahashatan, then the first 1,000 years of the Messiah, he was born as the king. Obviously his first 1,000 then is gone. 1,009 came, then the city was destroyed, the holy city, Jerusalem, plus the tomb was destroyed. Then started the 1,000 years of deceit, devilish, slanderer, devil, until 2009. 2009, devilish time had ended. So then we've entered the time of the dragon. So then during this time where we find ourselves adjusting the world as per then the dragon, because we are speaking not of tabernacling, we are speaking of the Gentile level. And every time we speak of outside of tabernacling, always comes first the dragon. No excuse or no other person can be in front of the dragon. Dragon must come after tabernacling. So then, nations are then grasping themselves during this time of transition, where then the dragon, localized in east, that's where the dragon is at. Devil, or what used to be then another type of facet, is yet on the west. The west is trying desperately to hold those junky, devilish practices of old, where then no longer exists. As then they realize so many mistakes they have done, and the gracious act of the Creator or the Almighty, where then he begins explaining via the prophet that the Gentiles were included in the plan. When you read the 61st chapter, you understand. Then the holy cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries would return, and the Gentiles would then take care of their vineyards and would take care of their flocks. These means the Gentiles were included. How do we know this besides then Yeshayahu? We find Daniel. Daniel was roughly 10% tabernacling, 90% Gentile. And then, understandably, Daniel was then explaining the time of the end for the benefit of the Gentiles, because he mostly of his time he is spent with a Gentile work. Then he explained for a time then his people, the set apart, those from Moshe, those from the loins of Ibrahim, for a time then they would get mixed themselves up with the world. But then after the 1,000 years of deceit going to and fro, then they would return to the holy services. Thus then when Shimon explains, then discipline would come upon tabernacling, this is what it meant. But not only this, during this time where then we realize church does not exist, if you want to understand a creator of the heavens and the earth, you must acknowledge then the true creator from the Israelic lineage. And he is tabernacling. You may want to understand other types of creators on your own. You have the liberty to do so. But make no link with the creation, creator, and then other religions, because they don't mix. What is of the world is of the world. What is tabernacling is tabernacling. Those can't be mixed. The time of mixing is gone, ended in 2009. We've entered the time of restoration where then tabernacling no longer mixes with the world. So then, when Daniel, as speaking of the Gentile level, he said, for a time they would go to and fro. To and fro is confusion, from 1009 to 2009. Then knowledge would increase at the end of it. But he was speaking from a tradesperson. The trade of the world would become with a mixture of high knowledge and the period of the dragon, means then computerized systems. In computerized systems, from the viewpoint of trade, you have to combine merchandise and a way of payment, a virtual type of payment using computers, where you exclude then the middlemen, scoundrels, bankers, those who are then playing around with your money, gambling. That's why our country is ruined. So this new system provides people with direct trade, where central bank, they don't have any more control over it. Because when the Chinese system becomes available, what's going to back it up is then production line. Though the paper money you won is also involved with gold and the Central Bank of China, plus regulations. But if the money fails, then they have the virtual, backed up by production line. That's why they have so many areas of raw materials style up, or should say pile up. Because they are providing themselves with enough raw materials. If there is a problem with the world's market as far as the financial system involving central banks and the such, they have the virtual. And they already have raw materials to back it up. So they have both. And we have nothing. We have an incompetent government, an incompetent military, unfortunately. Not saying the soldiers are cowards. That's not the point. Speaking of the administration, it is incompetent. We must understand the 11th chapter of Daniel explains Kingdom of the North rules as far as military is concerned. In fact, last year there was then an incident, mid-August of 2012. There was then a Soviet submarine. It was in the Gulf of Mexico for many days. And the U.S. Navy failed. They did not detect the submarine. Tremendous shame. That's why they get paid a lot, so they can find those people and track them down. They didn't. There is a very important article on Mail Online. Soviet submarine went through then U.S. Navy and did patrol in the Gulf of Mexico for days, more than 10, 20 days. And the Navy did not detect them. So why do we pay these admirals then so much money? They got housing, they got meals, they got car, they got credit card of the government. For what reason? Why do we pay these scoundrels to make these decisions, and then comes in submarines from abroad under of our noses? They did undetected. Incompetent scoundrels. And then last news, they decide to buy more destroyers from Arleigh Burke type. For what reason? Our country is ruined. Bad decisions, bad administration. We are spending 4 times more than we are earning. Military is making wrong decisions. We are not retrieving, we are not rebuilding. Maybe you should advise those admirals that made decisions of getting more than of these stupid destroyers. For what reason? Let me ask you this. Making an inventory of the submarines of China, for instance, we understand the Soviets, they have big submarines. And they also have those, some of them are tiny submarines. But China has more in numbers. What is the average size of the Chinese submarines? They are not very big. Not even these our admirals can understand. Chinese submarines are not very big. Couldn't they realize those were made for coastal areas? But then our military becomes complacent, joining up with this incompetent government. They make this country as a club of friends. And they don't realize Central America and South America, they hate Americans. But these people, they don't have enough knowledge of abroad. They were people from this country. They were raised in this country. Always then with their brains washed with superiority. And they don't understand. South America hates Americans because of the foreign policies. But they inflate themselves with importance and big shots, and then they order junky destroyers for no reason. A regular sailor from the US Navy that has brains can understand the system. And these top scoundrels earning a lot, they don't even know how to make decisions. And our president goes along with them because he's not a military man. So they are enjoying each other's incompetence. Pure disgrace. It's shameful. Why do they order those destroyers? What are they going to do with them? What are they going to depth the charge with? That's the function of a destroyer. It's to depth charge the enemy submarine. Besides other tasks. And the plain reason was because, oh, China got the clearance to go under the water, international waters. Huh, duh. Oh, China then got the liberty of going underwater, so let's order more destroyers. Stupid. They don't analyze the reason behind it. Daniel mentioned in 11th chapter regarding the status of the northern kingdom higher than the first. That's where then military should be receiving understandings from. Our stupid admirals, they don't understand the holy instructions. From a regular viewpoint without instructions, to make it easier because they are absolutely devoid of understanding, If you make an inventory of the Chinese submarines, you understand they are not very big. Obviously, you would link up with the shore patrols. Then you find China has closed a deal with Mexico, and the DragonMarket is being constructed in Cancun. A tourist area, understandably. But then they have no brains of understanding the way people outside of this country think. That's maybe why our country is ruining. Because the same old scoundrels doing the same thing for so long and expecting other results. The 27th of last month, then came an authority from China, went to Cuba. Do we find any information of the visit? No, you don't find a scrap of it. Other than a couple of days later, you find in Cuba news that they want to open up then some sort of an internet, cyber areas where people can use the internet. Kind of a superficial at first. But then comes the scrutinizing of why did Mr. Xi then go to Cuba? Was not on his route? Would be his first visit in this year. But then he sent another person. A couple days later you find then Cuba working on internet. Our Navy never recognized the fact that they are working with interference. They paid these scoundrels, these admirals, so much, they get complacent. They don't care anymore. They don't gather information properly. What they want, a nice retirement, easy going life, and, playing around with those damn ships. Retire and go to heck. So what is the objective then? So firstly we find then the Bitcoin system was then put down. Already the stupidity started. Because precisely the Bitcoin system will be used in the future. Where you find then the Chinese system involved with a virtual monetary system, where then central banks, they have no control over it, because people can do it online. There is only the conversion of the money and you can purchase. The second stupidity was ordering these destroyers. Don't they understand? People in Central America and South America, they hate Americans. They don't like them. Because they have this sense of superiority and they simply hate them. Now let me ask you this. You find then in Central America and South America then American destroyer. Do they understand what it means, coastal watchers? People with binoculars at the land, watching the ocean. Any sign of American ships on their waters or far away from is going to be alarmed. More interference in the system. Whereas if they were under the water, where they should be, then they wouldn't. Some situations are basic. Could be an admiral myself, would be doing a greater job than these scoundrels. Then you find this huge DragonMarket being constructed in Cancun, tourist area. Alright, we find then The construction site is more than 30% completed. It is a very huge compound. You have shops, you have hotels, you name it. And also a trading post. Read the news outside of US news. Because what we read in our news most of the time is junk. They manipulate the news in this country so bad that people, they become like ostriches. They don't believe it anyway, stick their heads in the dirt and then let it go to heck. That's why our admirals, they are making stupid decisions. Because they are complacent. So what is this going to cause? You find in submarines not very big with time on the water, 45, 50 days, roughly half of the size of submarine from the Second World War in terms of time at sea and also crew. So you can understand coastal, from port to port, stationary. What can you understand? Interference. And they made a choice very wisely in Cancun because they have so many tourists come around. Plus you have then a huge trading post of the Central Americas, Mexico. It's going to be the new power of Central America and North America, Mexico, because they have a link with China. And on the other side of the ocean you have Cuba. That's a military posting. But they are not reading the news, are they? Because after this authority went to Cuba on the 27th, where we cannot find any kind of information, other than a couple days later with this internet spot over there, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. What was the objective of this person over there that went on the 27th, other than military reasons for interference? And then the distance from Cancun to Cuba is not very big. Then you find submarines coasting around, as last year, then Soviet submarine was in the Gulf of Mexico. Our US Navy didn't know. But that does not stop there. There is more, because not only submarines are going to cause interference, they're going to rotate the hackers. These hackers, they come by submarine. They're not going to expose themselves coming by airplane. Those countries making deals with China, they're going to be silent because they are joining up with the socialist system. Though they can't say it. But the socialism viewpoint is simply working seriously. Then during the cloudy days, you find then submarines emerging, protecting the friends, doing trade, directed trade with China, then, rotating hackers. How can our Navy depth charge those submarines? What kind of a reason are they going to give? And people are going to be watching at the shore. Was it wise to buy more destroyers? No, it was stupid. They're not showing force, they're showing stupidity. So then the combination of tourism, then you find interference going on, sometimes in Cuba, sometimes in Mexico. Oh, what was it then? Was it some sort of a problem with the space up there? No, might be, somebody else. Or then somebody else came around and then as a tourist and was playing around with the signal. Oh no, it could be then in another area of the world. The Soviets are back. Let's try to understand these. Last month, the Soviets are back. And they are doing patrols already. Last year, they came undetected. What is our Navy going to do on the surface? If they show up themselves anywhere in the world, they're going to be reported. Daniel said at the end of the 1,000 years of deceit, knowledge would increase. Similarly, in Egypt, for instance, there were no 10 plagues. Those 10 plagues never had taken place. Those were dreams. Pharaoh had a set of dreams. But those dreams were very real. Later there is a section of the original instructions where you find then Pharaoh felt deceived because those were dreams. The Greco-Roman does not state because it's scandalized. They want to make people believe there were then plagues when they weren't. That's why then they were able to muster an army after the fact, because never had taken place. The Creator could not destroy a nation without having at least the instructions plain for them to understand. During this time of the 1,000 years then that the world was scandalizing itself, we find ourselves then returning to the holy calendar, and the holy instructions then becomes more vivid. So the same way he worked with the Egyptians is the same way he's working with the nations. Interference, confusion. Not saying the Creator is confused. He's using it so people have time and they can understand tabernacling rather than focusing in military and trying to be big shots and going around and try to show themselves. Because they're going to be dealing with areas they won't be able to grasp. Our Navy is going to be given the runaround. So then we can return and rebuild. And learn then the true Creator. Learning tabernacling. Because we were given the wrong scripture. So then, since we understand Mexico is becoming then the next power in North America, then you can understand also the countries of the BRICS. At some point, they're going to become socialists. Not truly divulged, but working very seriously as if they were. That's why they are part of the BRICS, because they want serious type of work when related with the trade, because they want to develop themselves and improve themselves. So then, China is red, Soviet Union is red, Mexico is red, Brazil is red, India is red, South Africa is red. And those are protected by the reds. And they are very capable, because last year then a submarine was in the Gulf of Mexico undetected. Already shows flaws in our military. But then these cheap bastards, rather than ordering more tiny submarines and staying under the water and then replenishment ships, so they can replenish themselves at high seas. No, then they want to show force. Then they buy destroyers, where they can be easily detected. Damn stupid. Those admirals that made decisions to get more destroyers should be fired. They are not fit. How are they going to show themselves on the surface in other parts of the world if the world hates them? Stay under the water. Don't they realize the BRICS, they want to get rid of USD? That is the problem with a country that does not lean up. When a country does not lean up during the time of crisis, then they want to show themselves incompetent, and that's precisely what they do. They show themselves incompetent. But the more they do, the more they think they have capability of being competent when they are not. Chinese yuan, for instance, is related with the Central Bank of China and also regulations from the government and backed up by gold. The virtual system is camouflaged with it and backed up by production line. If one fails, the other picks up. Thus far, they are working together hand to hand, very nicely leveled. And what do we have in our country? We have nothing. We have a failed system, a failed monetary system, spending 4 times more than earning. And rather than adapting the Bitcoin system, then they put a hold on it. Shows ignorance. That's a combination of presidents, Bush, Clinton, you name it, each of them. They're absolutely stupid. Coming up with Ozarks and then this crazy place over there in the center of US, going underground as reptiles. So what is our president going to face in the future? They have to face a situation where then they're going to confront the freighters of our country, the very capable people doing the actual work. The president is going to sit down in a chair and he's going to listen to the freighters. He's going to walk around, do his type of work. And at the end of it, he's going to sit down and listening then to those freighters. When the Messiah was then in tabernacling, he saw the Messiah is in the future. The Messiah is at the moment, at the present. He is also in the past. The Messiah in the future states he saw then the freighters of the earth. He saw the authority in the hands of the freighters. So let me ask you this, why is then our Navy wasting our money buying junky destroyers if then the new system has the protection of both countries, China and the Soviet Union combined? There is only a type of warfare and a type only, submarine warfare, detection equipment, and tracking then the other submarines. What are those destroyers going to do? Stand in front of a cargo ship where they have a contract with the freighters? What are they going to do then? Change the capital of US going to the Ozarks? When the USD then is ruined? So what is the solution? It's very obvious. Daniel already explained 2,500 years ago, as if it was yesterday. He was speaking of a system where then high knowledge and trade would be combined. The starting point, average price of the gold mark of China. Average price of the Chinese gold market. Establish as a constant and make a unit out of it, where we come up with USDV. Then we must get more gold and back it up with gold and work in our production line, so then both can be then implemented same as the Chinese, but it's camouflaged. When the USD then is ruined, you can be sure of it, China is not going to extend their hands. While the USD is active, there is a chance of then making a compensator for it, so people can start buying the units of USDV and preparing themselves as similar as Bitcoin. Then comes the work of tracking packages and charging taxes. Rather than playing around listening people's telephones conversations and playing around with emails.